What is going on, Notre Dame fans? Mike Singer for blueandgold.com with former Notre Dame linebacker and captain Mike Goolsby. We are live on YouTube for the Mike Goolsby Show. Thursday, July 7th. We get this thing going about 8 p.m. Eastern time. Appreciate you guys with us live. Appreciate those watching back on YouTube and for all the folks listening via podcast. You rock. We definitely love this community that's tuning into these shows. And Mike, the people are always asking for you. So we bring Mike on about every 3-4 weeks or so during the off season, and then during the season, Mike, we good to go on Sundays. You want to do those live shows on Sundays?
Yeah. We try to do them immediately following the game. And a guy like me, I like to process and watch it back a few times. So it's not as off the cuff as these shows are. People may be shocked to find out there's not a ton of prep work that goes into these, which I think adds to the dynamic. But yeah, absolutely. This is the most excited I've been for Notre Dame football probably since I was a player. I mean, easily the era that we're in now. So yeah, I can't wait.
Cool. You're wearing a hat. New York Yankees hat? You're a Yankees guy? What is
No,
that?
I'm not, dude. I saw a podcast the other day and a guy was wearing a hat. I'm like, I'm gonna try and wear a hat. But no, I'm not a Yankees fan. I've got a massive head, Mike. So I like to joke. Two things. One, I'll always have to work out. I'll always have to lift weights so I look somewhat proportionate to kind of balance out my head. And then if I find a hat that fits, no matter the team, I tend to buy it just because if it fits well, I'll buy it.
Okay, cool. How's everything going personally, man? Work, everything good?
Yeah, things are good. As we're coming on air, I've probably got more kids now training than I've ever had before, and had quite a bit of success with most of them. So over camp season and things like that, day job's going well. We've continued to kind of grow our little brand over here, brother. And things are great.
Yeah. I think most of the people that you're training, it's really because Mike Singer's been putting in a good word, and they watch the YouTube shows and they say the production and the host is really good. So I think that's probably where your business is coming from. But
yeah, I mean, it takes a village for sure. No, but truth be told, Mike, all kidding aside, you kind of understand. I mean, I look at you as an absolute resource for some of these kids. It's just in terms of like your know-how and wherewithal with the recruiting game and et cetera. So I've leaned on you more than once for some insight. So as busy as you are, bro, I appreciate the help.
Always. All right. I guess let's just kind of get into business.
Business is the key word, right?
Conference realignment. Let's start with USC and UCLA. Them going to the Big Ten and saying to hell with geography with these conference deals. When you see news breaking that USC and UCLA are going to go play in a Midwest conference, what's your first reaction?
Well, the UCLA was kind of a non-factor to me. But it does make sense in terms of viewership for them to come over to the Big Ten, hopefully play some earlier games. If it's like whole Pac-12 after dark thing. I have a kid I train that's playing at Oregon, and it's like you're either staying up till 2 a.m. to watch him play, or you're DVRing it. So it'll be good for both of those programs. When you like look at USC and UCLA, they're like the poster programs for what the Pac-12 kind of sort of represents. So that'll be an interesting thing to bring that type of West Coast, some might say a little bit of a softer style of football, just to come play in the Big Ten, the weather, the multiple tight end sets, kind of the ground and pound. So that'll be an interesting dynamic to see how the Iowas of the world adjust to a USC and how a USC adjusts to a Wisconsin. So that'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. So many interesting facets of it.
It really, yeah.
Get around. What the heck happens to the Rose Bowl? If Oregon and Washington trying to get out of town too, like there's just college football has so much pageantry to it and it's just kind of going wayside, right? I mean, it's a new age.
Yeah, well, that's what you said. I mean, jumping into this topic, let's get down to business, and it's, college football is a business. And it seems like every other week we're being pounded over the head and reminded of that. So yeah, what happened to the Rose Bowl? I don't know. I mean, it'll adjust, and see what it turns into. And that's the other interesting thing, trying to work through this conversationally. There's still so many unknowns, and chips to fall, really, right? Or dominoes to fall. So that's yeah, it'll be interesting. But yeah, that's the one thing that kind of makes college football so much different from the NFL is the brand loyalty, the fan bases. It seems to matter more to the teams. The rivalries are more are authentic. So I hope we don't lose that. Yeah, as time goes by.
Yeah, completely agree. Definitely, folks, joining us live, hit the thumbs up on this video. Subscribe to our page if you have not yet. Head to blueandgold.com. Still $1 for 1 year premium access. So you can get on the board, read all the good recruiting information, access the message boards, talk with thousands of other Notre Dame fans. And Mike Goolsby even drops by the board sometimes. So this comment here from Notre Dame 2164 says he loves the Mike Goolsby perspective on things. So you get to hear him on the Goolsby Show and pops in the board here and there as well, and we'll chat. So kind of talked about dominoes there. There's a big one to fall in that. What will Notre Dame do or not do? It seems like the Big Ten's kind of waiting on the Fighting Irish. So first question is, what do you want to see we haven't talked about this off air, so I have no idea what your answer is. Would you like to see Notre Dame go play in a conference? And if so, which conference? Or do you want to see Notre Dame independent?
We touched on this once before, and it might have been a few years ago. And as we've touched on before, I have to wear my analyst hat nowadays. But
it's a Yankees hat, but
sure. But I like at my core, man, I still look at it from a player's perspective. So joining a conference, throw the tradition, throw everything out the window in terms of Notre Dame having been an independent. I like the idea of joining a conference as an ex-player. If for nothing else, it makes it easier to win a national championship, in my view, because I can remember being on teams where we would lose a game and you're like, shoot, like our odds are down. You lose 2 games, you're out of it. So then it's like, well, then what else is there for the kids to play for? There is no conference championship. I mean, there's rivalries and things like that still matter, but there's nothing literally left to play for if you lose a couple games as a Notre Dame. So for that reason, I'm okay with joining a conference. There's more opportunity to put more trophies on a shelf and win a conference championship. So that's my stance on that. Just
so that's
30,000 foot view.
That's your former player hat. What about just Notre Dame fan, Notre Dame alum, Chicago kid in you? That aspect of it. I mean, just kind of the history of Notre Dame. I mean, I feel like it's just a pros and cons thing. You just got to weigh them, right?
Yeah, you got to weigh them. So it's like you talk about, and as we're doing a little bit of just mulling this over.
Mike, let me
sure.
Let me read this comment real quick as you continue mull it over. I mean, this is kind of what I'm saying. Eric says a big piece of Notre Dame football is the independence. People love or hate it, makes us unique. It's part of the brand. We lose that, our brand suffers. No arguments on that, but I do think
I have an argument, Mike.
Okay, go ahead.
So, in terms of loving or hating Notre Dame, no question. That's how Notre Dame fandom works. Very little gray area there.
Right.
I've always felt like as a player and now as a fan / analyst, that hate comes from the kind of holier than thou way that Notre Dame is semi kind of like tended to market itself. Like you can go back and watch, an old teammate of mine, Matt Kruger, his folks were living in South Bend, diehard Notre Dame fans. They would have like VHS tapes of old Lou Holtz games, the old NBC broadcast. And the way that Notre Dame marketed itself back then was more blue collar, salt of the earth. And that's kind of what your fan base, I think that's sort of what the fan base reflected that. And then now you watch an NBC podcast and I keep using the expression holier than thou, but I think that's where that hate comes from, is there's a small level of pretentiousness. I mean, you'd see it when you were, when I was a player, Mike, and I'll answer the question, but like when I was a player, sometimes you'd look into the stands, it'd be a big, third down, you weren't on the field, you're a young kid still waiting to become a starter, but like you look into the stands and there'd be like a woman in a fur coat and you're like begging her to get up, make some noise, and you wouldn't get that. So there's something, there's an element of that accompanies like Notre Dame fandom to a degree. And I think that's where kind of the hate comes from in my world. I don't know if that hate comes from being an independent. Now, ESPN doesn't like Notre Dame. I've always believed that to be true. Now, I think that ESPN's disdain as a huge player in, sports broadcasting, sports media, I feel like that hatred comes from the fact that we are an independent in our contract with NBC. That makes sense to me as far as that pertains to that question. But when you really look at this thing holistically, there's layers to it. The recruiting, scheduling, what else, Mike? Recruiting, if we go to the Big Ten, does it help recruiting? Does it hurt recruiting? Is it kind of a moot point?
I think it's a wash.
So it's somewhat of a moot point. What about the SEC? I mean, you only mentioned the Big Ten. My stance on what should Notre Dame do, what should Jack Swarbrick do, is sit and wait.
Yeah.
Everything that you read online, any bit of research that you do in Oregon, University of Oregon, they're waiting to see what we do. It's like, well, if we're the bell of the ball,
I think it's the Big Ten is waiting to see what Notre Dame does. I think Oregon and Washington won out. Big Ten, again, this is a lot of hearsay reporting from the national media. I think that's what it was, is that the Big Ten is pumping the brakes on Washington and Oregon because they want to see what Notre Dame's going to do. Regardless, everyone's waiting on Notre Dame. And Notre Dame seems to be fine with waiting things out because they can. It's freaking Notre Dame.
Yeah, we're the bell of the ball. We should absolutely wait. Are we going to expand the playoff? Right? If I had my crystal ball playing Miss Cleo over here, you know what Miss Cleo is, Mike, by the way? Google it when we get done. Used to be a 1-800 psychic number.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day, Miss Cleo. Anyway, yeah. So if I had a crystal ball, we're going to go from 4 teams to 8 teams, and maybe beyond that, it continues to expand. So, maybe, Mike, it's a fun conversation to have, and this is all just strictly hypothetical, is let's just say it's a given Notre Dame's going to join a conference. Are we joining the Big Ten? Or are we going to join the SEC? What's a better fit? I think that the Big Ten is going to – I think it's more advantageous for the Big Ten for us to join. I think we help the Big Ten more, and I think us joining the SEC helps Notre Dame more.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, selfishly, I don't want the SEC just Big Ten. You're playing Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan State, Michigan, USC. That rivalry means more than ever because it's a conference game now. So yeah, if we're talking Notre Dame moving to a conference, yeah, give me the Big Ten over the SEC, which. I mean, Notre Dame fans that don't like the SEC schools, it's a different dislike than how they don't like, Ohio State or Michigan or, those kind of, it's much more passionate because there's a lot of history there. I do want to pop on a few comments because we've had some really good ones that I want to bring up. I agree with most of these. James says independence is great, but hey, what about something simple? Like I'd like to see what players make an all-conference team. I mean, that's something that most of us wouldn't think about. It's a very small thing, but yeah, Notre Dame having some all-conference players. I think that's cool.
Well, like I just said earlier in the show, Mike, yeah, it gives us as players more opportunities to put more trophies on the shelves.
Yeah.
Completely agree.
Okay.
Completely agree.
Joe says, would joining a conference change the opinion of haters? No. So yeah, you join a conference, people are going to crap on Notre Dame because they just don't like Notre Dame. I mean, Mike, you were talking about the holier than thou thing. What about the aspect of Marcus Freeman making Notre Dame cool again?
No doubt.
Does that change anything in your mind?
I hope it does. I think you're absolutely starting to see that shift. But I do think the Notre Dame haters, if we did, and again, this is just for shits and giggles, but like if we did join an SEC, so if Clemson joins the SEC, for one, like if you beat up on some of those teams during a regular season, you might get more respect from Southern football fans, from SEC football fans, and maybe there's a trickle-down effect where Notre Dame football becomes more relatable to those Southern recruits. Does that make any sense?
Winning is relatable. Marcus Freeman.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But I don't think that Notre Dame beating a Penn State is going to relate to some kid from Dade County, Florida, right? It's just not. So if Florida State, Clemson join the SEC, and we go down there play in Tallahassee, you're gonna grab more kids' attention. So this goes way back to the Marcus Freeman hire. Everything to me is centered around recruiting. I mean, that is your world, right, Mike?
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the name of the game in college football. It's an arms race. Who can get the best athletes? So whatever gives us the best chance to recruit and get some interaction with those the best athletes. That's what I'm pro recruiting. And I think that spending more time in that southern part of the country, playing games, being on the road, getting more visibility to those kids. Can I be honest with you? So my college girlfriend played volleyball at Notre Dame, and she was from California. And prior to like Notre Dame recruiting her, she had never even heard of Notre Dame. She didn't know where it was. I asked her one time like about the movie Rudy. She said that like the movie Rudy was like 85% of the reason that she chose Notre Dame. She fell in love with Notre Dame because of that movie. But that just gives you, it's a high level athlete recruit that didn't even know Notre Dame existed. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So people in Pennsylvania, people in Ohio, people in Michigan, recruits, they already know that Notre Dame exists, kind of what Notre Dame's about. I truly think that some of those Southern kids, they don't know a whole hell of a lot about Notre Dame because all they've been hit over the head with is Bama, Tennessee, you name it, right? I think there's a lot of validity to that.
No, there is. But I don't know how big of a factor that would be. I don't know. It would be big or small. I think it would be not that big because Notre Dame's still up in Indiana. And that's going to be far from any kid in Dade County. Then again, Ohio State's getting a ton of those kids. So I don't know. Yeah, different discussion for a different day, probably. All right, we do have a few more minutes on realignment talk. A couple more things I want to get to, and then we're going to spend the rest of the show on 4 recent Notre Dame commitments that Mike wants to break down, and then any super chats you guys have, drop those, and we will drop what we're doing and get to your question right away. Otherwise, you guys could drop questions for Mr. Goolsby. I'll save some ones that I think are good, and we can get to it a little bit later in the show. A few more comments. Ron says he loves the 2 Mike show. Always good. We appreciate that. Michael
Thanks, Ron.
Says, hey, what about Notre Dame creating their own conference? That would be the biggest FU to the country in terms of like everyone has been like, Notre Dame, you should join a conference. Then Notre Dame makes their own conference. That would be amazing. Bass and Domer says Notre Dame needs to let it play out. No need to rush a decision. Yep, that's we agree on that.
We all agree there.
I think this is the best comment from Eric. Love is good, hate is good, boring, irrelevant is bad. And also, we can add into Eric's comment that being relevant is what matters here. That if you are not loved or hated, you're not super relevant. Like being hated is good. From a brand perspective, that people care about you, that's important. So I think that Notre Dame's people care about Notre Dame. Notre Dame's the belle of the ball here. Yeah, it's pretty good. Any other thoughts? Any thoughts on any of those comments, Mike?
No, I agree with that last comment. I mean, comment, yeah, love and hate are, cousins. So I would agree. I think it was like Harry Houdini had a quote about that. Like,
I've
as
never
long as
heard
you're
that
talking
before.
about me, what's that?
The love and hate are cousins. I've never heard
No,
that.
no, it's true. Like, but yeah, not caring is the worst thing in the world. Just being completely irrelevant. I have no feelings. Yeah, that's worse than being hated. But yeah, I think Harry Houdini had a quote about that. Like, as long as they're talking about me, just make sure you spell my name right. Something to that effect.
Yeah,
But yeah,
exactly. Okay, so this is my maybe not proposal, but this is what my favorite thing would be.
let's get into it.
Is a little bit of both. All right.
Mm.
So stay independent, and I have no idea if this would work out contractually and all that stuff. But let's just put that aside. Notre Dame stays independent, but they get rid of this boring ass 5-game ACC thing. I don't really care anymore about Notre Dame playing Duke and Virginia and Syracuse. I just don't.
Okay.
Craig, I see your super chat. We'll get to this next. But what if they did the same thing with the Big Ten? 5 games. And yeah, you're going to have some duds in there. And it's not going to be fun playing Maryland and Rutgers. But, whatever. Notre Dame gets 5 Big Ten games a season. Now we're talking. Now that's don't you miss Michigan State on the schedule in Michigan? I mean, like, don't you want to see Notre Dame play Penn State? I do.
I mean, so I'm going to say yes, and I love the idea, Mike.
Okay.
So we're gonna swap the ACC for Big Ten opponents, right?
Yeah.
So that's the premise of your argument. I like the idea of playing a Michigan, playing a Penn State based off of one brand versus another brand. I love that. But the style of football sucks. I mean, like, you watch Iowa, dude. I mean, like, watch Iowa play Michigan State. It's like, and I love defense. Like, I love all that stuff. I love watching run fits. But, dude, a 10-7 game doesn't really get my heart pumping. So with the USCs and the UCLA joining the conference, maybe you start to see them throw the ball around the yard a little bit more, and the Big Ten style of play starts to evolve. So I like the idea of a Big Ten schedule, but and I like the brand name of a Penn State, but I just don't like the style of football. It's boring to watch.
You seemed okay with you seem fine with either. Am I wrong in saying that? Like, you seem fine with Notre Dame staying independent. Like, you don't have a super strong feeling either way.
No, I've told you this before. Like, I have a limited amount of bandwidth, Mike, and this isn't some of this is above my pay grade. It sounds like so I want to do whatever is going to help us get to the playoff
and recruit.
And recruit. And I mean, that's how I look at it. What gives us the best chance to win? And I think there is like a rivalry. There's kind of a rivalry from when we played Ohio State in a bowl game a few years ago, maybe a decade ago now. I think that's a real thing. I don't like Ohio State fans. I've been adamant about that. So we'll see what it turns into. But I think joining the SEC is probably a pie in the sky idea. It'll never really happen because it's such an odd fit culturally and all that. But I think that'd be fun. If I woke up tomorrow and there was the news that Notre Dame had joined the SEC, I'd be doing backflips, and I can't even do any. I wouldn't be as excited if we joined the Big Ten. It wouldn't be. Yeah. It'd be kind of bleh to me.
Yeah. I just agree.
But yeah,
I think it'd be exciting. But I think I think Notre Dame's fine independent as well. Eric says he likes my idea, but do that with the SEC instead. Milton fan says, Mike, I love that idea. Don't know which Mike. I'm going to take credit for it, though.
All right. What was that super chat about, dude?
Oh, yeah.
Don't forget your boy.
Craig says, Mike, do you think Notre Dame will go to CBS as its next network now that the CBS is dropping the SEC? CBS is dropping SEC? What? Is that real? I don't know that, but I can't imagine Notre Dame is going to drop NBC unless something crazy happens, Craig.
Well, unless NBC's got to figure out that Peacock streaming service. I mean, in 2022, it's like, A, it's a little glitchy, and B, it's kind of bullshit, like just in general. So I think I'd like to see them align themselves with whatever network has the best sort of streaming platform personally.
So many.
But it could be a fit. I mean, CBS is kind of a stuffy network, though. It's like I tend to think of like an older demographic when I imagine
Who's watching
CBS.
60 Minutes these days?
Yeah, like they're still showing like Everybody Loves Raymond reruns, and I think that was a CBS show.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive, man! What a time to be involved in this college football world. It is.
Dude, it's nuts.
It's bonkers.
It's crazy. Like NIL, I don't like it. But it don't matter because it's a thing, and I'm kind of thankful to be covering Notre Dame. That doesn't really that's not their shtick. Is paying recruits. I'm thankful to cover Notre. I've been thankful to cover Notre Dame before NIL, and certainly more than ever now. But transfer portal, man. Do you remember when like Lincoln Riley was leaving, and Brian Kelly? Just these crazy moves. That I feel like those two moves don't even compare.
Yeah, fuck that guy, by the way, right? I mean, Kelly. Oh, we can't recruit. It's like, okay, is that so? Looking at the classes now and what Coach Freeman's putting together, it's like, the harder you work, the luckier you get, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it feels like everything related to college football, Mike, it just feels like it's just whizzing by. You know what I mean? So it's like, can we almost just get to the season so we have a sense of normalcy here, right? I mean, unless they're going to change the rules and switch to like Canadian rules football or something. It's like, can we just get back to some semblance of normalcy here?
BC says this would all blow Lou's mind. the greatest of all time, Lou's emoji. Yeah, I just, man, it's not fair that we lost Lou because we could really use his perspective and wisdom on all of this. Because
amen.
Lou would be able to give us some great knowledge, and I know he'd be calling me a lot confused about what's going on, but
yeah, I think about Lou often. And I think, Mike, you were closer with Lou than I was, but I do think about him, and just an absolute is just steel trap of like Notre Dame knowledge. It's just really amazing. But the guy has been remembered and will be remembered, and that's the most you can kind of hope for when we all go, right? So
all right.
You want to jump into these recruits then, bud?
Yeah. Brian, no one heard that. Don't worry about that. Yeah, no one. All right. So yeah, let's shift gears to talk a little recruiting. So Notre Dame,
a little recruiting, huh? Is that what you're calling it now?
Notre Dame picked up what? How many commitments has it been since the start of the summer? Like 6, 7? It's been a lot. We're going to talk about the 4 most recent here in the 2023 class. Here's Charles Jagasaw, Mike, from Rock Island, Illinois, Alleman High School. Now, his high school team last season, pretty bad. I think they went defeated, and they only scored like a few touchdowns on the season. They got a 5-star recruit, though, per On3, number 7 recruit nationally, and number 1 offensive tackle. Are those good shaking of head, Mike?
Oh, it's remarkable.
So, let's pop on the tape. I don't think he's a traditional, like when you think of a number 1 offensive tackle in the country, I don't think he's your traditional one, but what do you think about him? So you'll see him playing tackle and display defensive tackle.
So what makes you say you don't think he's a traditional tackle? What do you mean by that?
He's not like 6'8", 300 pounds. He's not like he's a freak show, but I don't. It's still a little bit more of a projection.
Yeah. So if he's tackle guard, sure. I've mentioned Jagasaw to some of the kids that I've trained recently as I've seen his film. And there's a lot of kids out there that have the height, weight measurables, 6'6", 300 pounds plus. There's a lot of them, right? But I think the thing that makes this kid so highly rated and so sought after is when you watch the defensive clips, the burst is really what jumps off the screen at you, and that he's like the quickest player on the field and he's twice the size of everybody else. And I've just kind of shared that with some kids. It's like showing that burst, like some hip drive there, some natural snap on that clip. But that's really what pops out at you in the potential. And this is a big kid. Doesn't have the best technique or any technique really in terms of footwork and whatnot. But he's a mauler. And like, you get around, we talked at length about that spring game ex-player dinner where I was able to kind of rub shoulders with some of these guys and had a lot of fun sizing up kids. And I mentioned that we kind of look like a basketball team at times, in terms of the length and the size, but this kid, he's like a mountain of a man. And yeah. I played with two guys when I was in, my cup of coffee in the NFL. Flozell Adams was a left tackle for the Cowboys, and Larry Allen is the Hall of Fame, played every position on the line but center. And both of those men are so big, Mike, that they don't even necessarily have to have the best footwork, just because there's so much to get around. You understand? Like if a kid Charles Jagusah's size stands in front of you, you just, how do I negotiate this? He's huge, right? And almost in that Blake Fisher mold, where Blake Fisher sometimes can have some heavy feet. Hopefully he's worked on his conditioning in the offseason, but it's kind of like that Blake Fisher mold. Give me the biggest, best athlete I can. And that's what I see with Charles Jagusah. And it really jumps out at you when you watch the defensive footage. And he seems to play the game the right way. I didn't realize he was on such a poor team in high school. But if he's still playing hard and knows that the odds of winning the game are slim to none, that shows you quite a bit about like his football character, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think he was recruited by other schools and he wanted to stick there. Undefeated wrestler, won a state title.
Yeah.
I think it was Class A in Illinois, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, wrestlers, I mean, I played with two wrestlers when I was at Notre Dame. John Sullivan, who had a hell of an NFL career, and Trevor Laws, ended up being a second round pick for the Philadelphia Eagles. And those guys would go at it in the locker room time to time. And that was just like a Clash of the Titans type thing. So yeah, wrestling and football go together like peanut butter and jelly. It just does. And again, it's just more of the same in terms of like his toughness. And also, you and I like to talk about this, Mike, the whole good face, kind of looking the part. Like you look at Charles Jagusah and you're like, that guy looks like just a stud lineman in general, with the neck and like just an exciting kid. I mean, kid's a stud.
Yeah. Yeah. I wrote a mailbag article today. Some Bloom Gold subscribers asked me questions and I answered. And one of the questions was favorite kid to interview in the 23 class. And I went with Charles. Like, the dude hadn't tweeted anything in like 3 months. And then his next tweet was, "Hey, I'm committing." Like, no. Look, the live streams are great. The hats, doing all that's fine. What about just like a good old tweet, committing to Notre Dame, and that's like it? Like, there's something to Charles Jagusah, just the simplicity.
Well, what's he like? Is he a quiet kid, just self-assured?
Yeah, he's a quiet, reserved kid, but super. Like, I don't think he likes doing interviews. Like, I don't think that's his favorite thing. He looks at his phone. Oh, Mike Singer's texting me to talk to me. I just done 3 of these after my visit. I don't really want to talk. But he's so gracious with his time, gives very thoughtful and truthful answers too. Like, I'm fine with a kid BSing me in an interview. Like, I know that you got to, keep things under wraps. Like, they aren't trying to leak some information at some time, but Charles is just always super honest and upfront, and it's just great to cover.
Sounds like a great teammate.
Going back to him staying on that defeated team, and he's not transferring for a senior season. He's a freaking great teammate. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, remember when you used the word pageantry, but like remember when Rocco Spindler's recruitment? I thought that Rocco Spindler enjoyed recruiting a little bit too much for my taste.
He wasn't your favorite recruit, that's for sure.
Well, as now if he was a a wide receiver or something, I would have a different perspective. But as like a headbanger inside, you're an interior lineman. Like I kind of want more of a Charles Jagasaw approach to recruiting in just in terms of like your overall demeanor. Like keep your head down, work. Hopefully we'll see you in the NFL in 3, 4, 5 years, right?
Yeah.
That's just if I had it my way. So I'm happy to see it.
Yep, definitely. All right. If you're with us live here, watching back on YouTube, tap the like button. Like Irish One says, definitely appreciate that. If you're listening via podcast, you have not left us a review wherever you listen to your pods.
Can I jump in real quick too, Mike? I think there's a thing where it's like if you're already subscribed to the channel, unsubscribe and then resubscribe. I think that's a thing. Helps our numbers. I think it helps. I think it's a way to work around that YouTube algorithm. So yeah, unsubscribe and resubscribe. Let's see what happens.
That sounds good to me. Just make sure you do resubscribe. That's the most important part. I just want to make sure you're locked in. We post a lot of good stuff on the Blue and Gold YouTube channel. This definitely is my favorite. Getting here from Mr. Goolsby. Interesting player here, Mike, from Houston, Micah Bell. Quite the differing opinion of him in the rankings. Top 50 recruit on one side, a 3-star on another. We can save that, or if you want to dive into that, you can. But just overall, him as a player.
What's his Mike? The screen's tiny. Is he listed at 5'10"?
5'11", 170, which I can. Let me see what he actually is at. I don't know when that
I'd say he's. I mean, I've seen the film. He looks like to be 5'10".
Yeah,
and he's not the longest kid in the world. So sometimes, with that.
Yeah, I don't have the updated weight on him.
Visually, Christian Gray looks to be a bit taller on film, just because he has a little bit of added length. Like just optically, it just makes guys look taller. But
let's watch him.
Yeah, man, this is a special talent. I mean, he's like I like to throw out comps, but like he's almost like a Rocket Ishmael.
Woo.
Yeah, dude, I mean it. I mean, slippery burst. Like he'll have a couple runs on here, and I know we're recruiting him as a DB. We'll see how that plays out. This is in Reggie Bush high school highlight tape type run, Noel Devine, West Virginia type, like just YouTube legends. But yeah, he's a special athlete. And then like the other thing that you see on some of these plays is that I haven't heard anybody talk about, but is like the conditioning for all that stopping and starting on any given play to still have the gas in the tank, to still have some burst left over is ridiculous. So I'm just happy that we got this kid. Has rare speed, elite speed and quickness. They're kind of cousins, but they're the same but different, speed and quickness. He looks like he's got both in droves. And we'll see what he ends up being as far as even what side of the ball he plays on. I'm not entirely convinced that he's going to be a corner. I'm just not. Just because he looks to be a little bit on the smaller side, and I think that might serve him better as an offensive weapon as opposed to a defensive one, personally.
I mean, we don't have, just in watching his highlight tape, you don't have as much information and context that all these colleges do. But like, you just watch this and you're thinking, why is everybody recruiting him as a corner? I think his closing speed and his athleticism will do well at corner. I think he could be an elite nickel with his agility and, just kind of his reaction speed, quick hips. But like, man, you watch him running back and you see he's got like 10.3, 10.4, 100-meter speed. It's like, why do you think he's being recruited at corner?
Why do I?
Yeah, what's your opinion?
I don't know. I don't really have a great answer for you. Unless, and this is me grasping at straws here, Mike. and I don't get the luxury of seeing him at camps or any of
Right.
this
That's
other
what I'm
stuff.
saying.
So
Right.
if his hands are a little bit suspect or his hands are a little bit iffy, that could lend itself to playing defense as opposed to like if he'd be a slot corner, he'd be a great little slot receiver, right? Or he'd be a great little gadget guy out of the backfield. But if his hands are suspect, that might be a reason why. I don't have that answer.
But he's super fast. You're glad to have a 10-4 kid on your team, right?
No doubt. No, and I mean, I played
with
a kid, two kids at Notre Dame that were like 10-5 guys. I mean, Dwight Ellick was a corner, started for us, wasn't the best player, but had a couple good games, had a great game against Michigan. But there's a difference between in Dwight won state, and I think he was in New Jersey as a junior, moved to Florida, won state in the 100 and 200 in the state of Florida, right? So he's a fast kid. But I watched Reggie Bush run away from him when we played USC. And there's a difference between like straight line speed and then the ability to flip your hips, whereas this kid seems like he has some fluidity to play corner. But if it were my team, I might try and start him on offense if he has natural hands, which I hope he does. But you see him just pull away from people. So nevertheless, he'll get on the field. But that's another one of these kids, Mike, I talk about all the time. I'd like to be able to see him in the flesh because if he's a tiny little guy, I'd rather put him on offense than leave him at defense. But exciting player nonetheless. And yeah, Rocket was kind of the comp to me just because it's like, man, that kid's a little bit different in a good way.
Yeah. Again, Kens and Karens out there. It's just a comp. It's just like give you an idea of what the player is. He's not saying that, Michael Bell's going to be Rocket. So just calm down there.
I'm definitely not.
Don't call my manager. All right. Next up is Rico Flores. And again, folks, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to our page, or unsubscribe and resubscribe, but that's the thing. blueandgold.com, $1 for a year premium access. Got a super chat, a question for Goolsby. Drop it right away, and we'll get to it. I love Rico Flores, Mike. I mean, this kid, I think he's really like him. But I want to hear your thoughts on him as a football player before, I want to hear what you got to say, and then I'll rebuttal.
Well, he's a great football player. Looks freaking great playing DB on a couple clips here.
He does safety, yeah.
And some of this stuff, some of my commentary, Mike, is just based off of like just being around the game as long as I have and seeing as many kids and working with kids. This kid, Rico, seems like a kid that takes this stuff seriously in terms of his approach. And his desire to be great. And that's just seeing him interviewed a couple times and I think the game means a lot to him. And we've talked about that we need more kids on the team that love football and it matters to them. So that being said, I think he's a great football player overall. I think he can do a lot of things for you. My only knock on him was, and it could be like he has his shoes spatted in terms of like he has tape around. I think you said you used to spat your shoes, Mike. He looks to be like a little bit heavy-footed. He doesn't look like fleet of foot to me. Now, he's playing both ways. I don't know if he's playing on natural grass or whatever, but he doesn't have as much like bounce in terms of like his movements as I'd like to see. He just looks like he has almost like I said, he's heavy-footed. That was the first thing that jumped out to me. And he might not have an extra gear.
Yeah.
But I think his comp to me, just in terms of looking at him, was like an Avery Davis, the way he kind of plays the game. I think he can get you dirty yards. I think he'll be a reliable possession guy. This isn't a knock at all, but I don't necessarily see him taking off the top of the defense. But I do see in a jump ball scenario, he's going to come down with it.
Do you remember, Mike, do you remember C.J. Williams, the receiver commit?
The kid that went to Southern Cal.
Do you remember his tape? You think they're pretty similar?
No, I think that Rico's more fluid than that kid was. That kid seemed kind of rigid to me, just sort of a semi-robotic. I think this kid's a much more fluid, sort of looser athlete.
Once you said that about CJ, I just popped in my mind his rivals camp tape from last year. It was so bad. I mean, he won MVP that day, and I'm like, man, these routes look awful.
Yeah. And he was kind of like a pretty boy whole thing. I mean, like, yeah, like that's a kid he's not going to want to come play in the snow versus, Penn State or what have you in Big Ten ball. But this kid, like, you could tell he's worked on his craft. He runs sharp routes. He's a tough kid. I think he'll become a fan favorite.
Definitely.
But yeah, he'll play like he'll do what you need. Now, so remember we were talking. Who's the kid? God, who was our big receiver last year? His name's escaping me.
Merriweather.
No. He was a senior. He went to the NFL. He left. People thought he should come back for another year.
Oh,
outside receiver, Kevin Austin. So like, Kevin Austin never showed a lot of heart to me in terms of his competitiveness and like being freaking dialed in. And I feel like Rico Flores is oozing that shit in terms of like how serious he takes this. So yeah, he'll become a fan favorite. I like him. Probably like more of a 4-5 guy than a 4-4 guy. But I think if we need a catch in any given moment, critical moment, I think he could become a quarterback's best friend.
I love it.
Right?
I love it. And he's got shit to him. Dude,
that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
I freaking love Rico Flores.
And he's a 4.0 kid too, right?
Super smart.
Yeah.
Be great in the locker. Like,
I mean, there's some of these catches, though. I mean, these are dirty catches. And this is decent high school football, right?
Like when pundits are talking about a kid or just a football player, oh, he's a lunch pail kind of guy, just like that normal white slot receiver. Like Flores is that, but on the very, very elite end.
Yes.
Right? Like
Mike, I was one of those guys.
But I'm talking about more of the receiver position.
No, but I totally agree with you. He's a hard-nosed kid that and by the way, he's a great athlete on top of it.
Dude.
So both things can be true.
Yeah. So when I played high school ball,
back on what, hey, Mike, can you run that one clip back?
Yeah. Which one? This pick?
Yeah, that pick. Yeah, in the end zone.
All right, that's this next play here.
You got to have some stones. So he's playing man, right? And he says, F it, because he's reading the quarterback as he's playing off man. To go do this, to go leave your guy like that, to go make a play.
I think that's being thrown to Cooper Flanagan, Notre Dame's tight end commit. They're playing De La Salle. That looks like Flanagan.
But I'm just saying, dude, I mean, he left his man. You got to have stones to be able to trust your instincts enough to go make a play like this. That kind of speaks to maybe his preparation. But remember, Mike, we've talked about this dude coming out all these games versus Clemson, Bama. It's like, gosh, we just need more kids that are willing to make that extra little effort to stick their neck out.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like rise to the occasion. That's kind of what you see from Rico, is just a willingness to go compete and be a really good athlete and just an all around really, really great football player. So yeah, big fan of his. Yeah. And I've become more of a fan of his as the more film I've watched, but just in terms of like areas of improvement, a little bit of foot speed, just becoming a little bit more light on his feet. I don't know how to explain that, but it's just something that kind of jumped out at me. But no, really happy we got him.
Yeah. I was a possession receiver in high school many pounds ago, and it warms my heart to see elite level possession receivers like Rico Flores, which is not a knock. Yeah, he's not a 4-3, 4-4 guy, but
well, having played the position, what does it mean to you when you're Mike Singer, football 101? How do you define a possession guy?
Technically sound. Like he's not going to run past you to get open or run by you, whatever it be, but he is going to give you that quick move off the line, the hesitation, give you a quick shoulder to make you think he's going inside and then he's running a comeback to the outside. Just like very technically sound, very well coached.
Well, you as a possession guy might not run by anybody, right?
God, no.
So Rico can run by you, but I guess what you're talking about,
but that's not going to be his game.
The art of setting people up, right?
Art of setting people up.
Got it.
Love it. Yeah, us possession guys, we've got to work a little bit harder. But now I'd be playing guard. So love Rico Flores, man. I think the analysts.
Who'd be a better guard, Mike? You or Cade Madden right now?
Shut up. I think the analysts are like, I think we're out thinking the room here, not having him ranked higher. I think we're like trying to be too smart. It's like, let's knock him because he doesn't have the speed. But you know what other wide receivers don't have? That polish. Like, why does it have to be all about upside? What about the floor? Rico Flores is not going to be a bust. Like, he's just going to work. Even if he ends up sucking at receiver for whatever reason, which there's no shot, he's a really good safety. I mean, that should be worth something. I think he's like a top 100 player, but that's just me.
No, but I agree. So I just started working with a new wide receiver. He's 6'4", right? So it's like all we're working on is him dropping his weight so he can get in and out of cuts, right? Yep. So if a kid's a 4'3" kid, 4'4" kid, and he doesn't know how to tempo his speed on different routes and things, it's kind of what's he just going to do? Just run go balls? And I know that's sexy for people, but what you're seeing with Rico, like the conviction to come down with that ball, the conviction to go up in traffic and make those catches, I don't know how you quantify that. I mean, you can't go to a camp and test for that, right? So you got to watch the film. So, but a year from now, Mike, all those ratings, it won't make a bit of difference anyways. So I think, he'll be polished enough. And I don't see Rico, man. I think I just became president of the Rico Flores fan club.
Oh, screw you.
I think that just happened. I'm going to do it before you do it. But
damn it. You took my kid.
I'm just telling you, I don't see him not playing early. He's going to get – I just don't see him not finding a way to get himself into the rotation. I just don't. Okay.
I'm going to give him a call after this. Been needing to catch up with Rico, so I'm going to give him a call after we're done with this stream.
Nice, man.
All right. Milton.
Are you going to let him know that you guys are kindred spirits? You're both possession guys. Hey, Rico, man, we play the same position.
Probably sound like a D-bag. I'm sorry for that comment.
It's fine, dude. It's fine. That's what's great about high school football, Anyway.
Milton fan says, Singer, you're vicariously living through Rico. Yeah, definitely. And this is a good point. Like, track speed versus football speed. That's a real thing, right, Mike? Like, you can beat track speed. Yeah, we have. Now that
you're seeing it with Chris Tyree. Chris Tyree is he's a Ferrari, right? And it's like versus a Toyota Camry is going to drive for 500,000 miles, just change the oil, and Chris Tyree, like, everything has to be mint in order for him to feel good enough and go play. So I completely agree with that.
Okay. All right, last recruit here. And again, these are all Notre Dame commits. They all just picked the Irish here in the past, week, I think. Yeah, week. Christian Gray committed on 4th of July. So made Mike's finger work. It's okay, Christian. I forgive you. I'm kidding. This is someone who we actually watched, I want to say, on our last Goolsby show, or maybe the one before that. I was just like, I just want to throw this kid on film. I may or may not have known the kid was committing and wanted to get Mike's thoughts. So yeah, Christian Gray, 6'1.5", 175 pounds, plays like he's 6'2", though. He's got really long arms. On 3 has him listed as the 18th best corner country, number 150 overall player. He's going to be shooting up the rankings. That's not that I have anything. I don't make the decisions on the rankings, but just got a feeling. Fast 4.4 kid, ran a 4.49 at Notre Dame going into his junior year in the 40-yard dash, ran 4.40, 4.42.
I was going to say he's run faster than that, yeah.
Yeah, and his first time ever running track, he ran an 11.0 in the 100-meter. Like, that's pretty darn good. So, Bell seems like an athlete playing corner. Christian Gray is a corner.
There's a play coming up here, this next pass breakup. It's this play right here. Watch the way he jumps and attacks the ball.
Yeah.
Like, it's little things like that. Like, that's so athletic for a kid just to to get up in the air and do that. Now, I mentioned this before. He's like a carbon copy of Avante Dickerson, who was out at Oregon right now. So much so I sent this kid's highlight tape to Avante, and he was like, yeah, dude, it's crazy. Like, we look like the same player, and Avante might be a hair faster.
Avante,
but yeah,
that.
He's going to be for sure. I mean, and Avante was a 10-9 guy as a true freshman in high school, I think he ran 4.39 at Ohio State's camp. So, I mean, they're right there. But the measurables are all the same. So he's a field corner, smooth athlete. He's what you're looking for. It'll be interesting, that room. So I think the corner room. So I think some of the previously recruited kids, the Ryan Bards, the Mickeys of the world, they have a little bit more, and I hate the word swagger. We got to come up with a better football term for that.
Shit.
Guys that have some shit to them. So I think Christian's kind of, and you mentioned this, he's more of a humble kid in terms of like his personality.
Very much so.
But athletically, he's got the goods.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that conversation with Avante. It's like, you can be a confident kid, and it's okay to act confident in terms of trying to win over your coaches. So I think some of that energy in that cornerback room, I'm hoping Christian kind of gleans a little bit of that from those guys. But he's a talented kid. I mean, this is like kids with his measurables that run like he does. I mean, they're NFL kids. I mean, this kid will end up going in the 3rd, 4th round one day just because of the measurables. And he's a super fluid. I mean, it's a guy that will be in a rotation. I really like him. It's a position of need. Had a great offer list.
Yeah. Bama, Ohio State, USC, LSU.
But it's interesting to look and kind of compare and contrast like this video footage versus Micah Bell's footage. And so he might be listed at a couple, 2-3 inches taller than Micah Bell, but he looks like markedly bigger on film.
There's a lot more of, I mean, we've seen a bunch of gray in the return game, but I feel like there's a lot more of gray at corner than there is at Bell at corner in his film. But Bell, mainly a running back in high school right now. So
yeah, but just the prototypical measurables, and 6 foot with like a 6'6" wingspan, runs 4.4. Yes, please.
Yeah. All right. What about this? Oh, nope, wrong comment. Aaron, not to my knowledge, but I didn't mean the pop.
I can't wait to talk about Hannafin, by the way, one of these days. Oh, I think he's a fascinating kid. Another kid I need to see in person to see like the size of the frame in terms of where he's going to slot position wise. Mojo. Okay, thanks for that, Milton.
Yeah, swagger equals mojo. So
I can't say mojo and not think about Austin Powers though. So
not a big Austin Powers guy. It's been a really long time since I've seen that movie.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Christian Gray. I mean, cornerback recruiting, Mike, it's really bad. He's the highest ranked corner recruit for Irish since 2007. I mean, great, you got Christian Gray, but man, when you think about it, that's really bad for Notre Dame that it's been that long since they land like a top 100 cornerback like this. So,
well, it goes back to that our preliminary conversation, Mike, about joining an SEC. It's like these elite skill guys that play on the edge, whether it be receiver or corner. You find a lot of them down south. So, where is Christian from?
St. Louis.
St. Louis. Okay. So, Midwestern kid.
Would you think Georgia or something?
I was in my mind I had South Carolina or something like that. But yeah, he seems to understand football, has pretty good technique. I'm glad we got him. Absolutely.
All right. We're about an hour. Any closing thoughts before we get out here, Mike?
No, not really. I had a whole agenda, folks. I cooked up this whole agenda, all these bullet points, and Mike threw it out the window.
Shut up. We're doing that.
So we'll get there.
A couple weeks. Wish list for the season. Yeah, man. I mean.
Yeah, so maybe our listeners can kind of come up with a wish list of their own. I've got some ideas of things I'd like to see going into week 1 of the Freeman era.
It's going to be fun to start transitioning from topics like should Notre Dame join a conference and a pissing match between, Marcus Freeman and Ohio State. That wasn't a pissing match, but like we're doing all these off-season topics and we're finding content. It's going to be fun to talk football, man.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely. I cannot wait. Cannot wait.
It's going to be fun. All right. This has been the Mike Goolsby Show. Appreciate everyone been with us live. We had a great group. Appreciate all those watching back and on podcast as well. Head to blueandgold.com. $1 for 1 year of premium access. Appreciate everyone. Have a great night, and we'll talk to you next time.